Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unauthorized Teacher Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am here with such a wonderful guest today. I'll let her introduce herself because no one knows her better than she does.
Well, I'm Mary Ruth Vincent, and I grew up in Hereford, Texas, and I taught in Amarillo, Texas.
And I just have to say, we're recording on her beautiful, beautiful resort, Glen Isle, about an hour west of Denver.
It's 45 minutes west of the outskirts of Denver. So, yeah, to get down to the big heart of Denver, you're about an hour away.
It's absolutely beautiful. This is our third annual family trip here, and we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So if you're ever in the Colorado area and you need a place to stay, please check out Glen Isle. It is one of the best places I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing.
Yeah, I think you got proposed here.
I got engaged here. Yeah, I got engaged at Glen Isle 3 years ago yesterday.
It's a special spot.
It's a special weekend. We're recording this. It's Taylor Swift's wedding weekend.
Yes, it is.
I know you have a Taylor Swift story. Do you wanna share it?
Oh my gosh. I would love to share the Taylor Swift story. So, my son and his wife they lived in Nashville and they wanted to take us to this new restaurant that they loved. And so we went, and as we were dining, Taylor and her entourage walk in, and I was so excited because I was teaching middle school at the time, and all of my middle schoolers loved Taylor, and oh my gosh, they would have lost their minds had I gotten the picture and talked.
And she was with Tom Hiddleston, right?
She
Like, Getaway Car, that's my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a wonderful story. Well, so blessed.
Yeah, no, they're great, although I wasn't able to talk to her. My kids were like, "No, don't you dare move. Don't talk to her. Just eyes down, mom." But yeah.
Well, and congratulations, Taylor and Travis. I know y'all are listening.
Yeah, of course you are. You should be.
Should be. So, I just wanna get a picture of where you began. So, what year did you graduate high school?
So I graduated in 1986, May of 1986. Yeah.
Wow, and what type of school did you go to?
So I went to Hereford, Texas, and it was a small little public school. I think we had like 360 graduating in our class.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
not a lot.
Yeah. I think, 500. I think I had 542.
Well, once you get over 300, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be a million.
Yeah.
It just seems like a lot of people.
And what teacher inspired you the most?
I remember when I was going back to get my education degree, this question was asked, because they were like, you are the professional, as a teacher going through school, what makes a good teacher and what makes a bad teacher. And so they said, think back to what was the best teacher you ever had. And it was Mrs. Cagle. Actually, it wasn't Mrs., she was Miss Cagle in the 3rd grade, and she was just soft-spoken.
Mm.
A lot of our teachers yelled at us, and she was just very quiet, but, she could kinda raise her eyebrow and let you know she was disappointed, but just very kind and loving and embracive to all of us, and I think we all loved her a lot.
Like Miss Honey.
Miss Honey, yes.
Mhm.
Miss Cagle.
I love that.
Yeah.
And what made you want to become a teacher?
So I grew up in a teaching family. So
Mm.
my grandmother was a teacher and my mom was a teacher. So being around teachers was something that I was always accustomed to. And I remember going to school with my mom and playing on the chalkboard and writing names and pretending as a little girl that I was a teacher. But as I got into high school, it was something I drifted away from. I did not want to be a teacher. I wanted to go a completely different direction. So I went to school for theater and got into school doing theater and didn't really love it as much as I thought I would. So I thought I would be a broadcaster. And then I met a boy and I got off on a different course. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s that I would go back to school. And at that time, I wanted to go into journalism. And I had written for the Amarillo College newspaper and won a couple of awards and was really excited about that career path. And then there was a professor at Amarillo College that was like, no, 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 no. You don't need to do this. You have kids, you have a family.
Mm.
Journalism is not going to be a good outlet for you. So you should probably do teaching. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to teach, I'm going to teach something I really enjoy. So I was on that path of what does that look like? And a journalism class wasn't offered in the summertime. So I had to take a theater class. And so I took this theater class and I had forgotten the magic of theater.
Mm.
And I went back and I took this class and I was like, oh my gosh, if I have to teach anything, I want to teach theater. And so that is where the career path started leading me. But at the time, I had an autistic son who was very young and he was struggling with communication. And so I decided to go speech, communication, and theater. So that's the career path I went down. So I
Beautiful.
have the degree between theater and speech.
Beautiful. And what did you end up teaching?
So I started out teaching at Paladuro High School in Amarillo as a cheerleader coach slash theater. I no, sorry, speech teacher. And then I would substitute for your mom and theater some, and I would have such a great time doing that. And when a job opportunity came open to teach theater, I took it. And so I would teach theater and speech at Bonham Middle School.
Mm.
And eventually, the theater classes became so popular that they were like, hey, we don't need you to teach speech anymore. We just need to teach you to teach theater. So
Be-
that's what I did.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It was,
I didn't go to Bonham, but I knew you were an icon because I heard so much about the theater classes at Bonham, and I was really jealous because when I started at Crockett, we didn't have a theater program.
right.
They started the theater program my 7th grade year, and I was really jealous. I was like, "Mom, send me to Bonham so I could teach theater."
You know, it was teachers like your mom that really inspired me and some others in Amarillo. They made it so easy. Here, do this. Yeah. And all you had to do was look at what they did, and then your imagination would just kind of soar. Yeah. You would start to envision ways to create things that were so incredible. And my main goal was never to have kids in desk,
Mm.
that we would always be up doing something. So we would start with a circle
Mm.
and we would talk about the best things that had happened to us the day of school. And quickly you learned that it wasn't always the best things that we needed to talk about, that sometimes it was things that were tough. Sometimes it was things about this was really bad for me today.
Yeah.
And when they could talk about those things and we could embrace that as a class,
Mhm.
we really learned to spread our wings and trust one another. And that was the coolest part of what we were doing is that we were truly learning to trust each other
Yeah.
and that we could be silly and we could be goofy and we could say things that were not always so cool. That
Beautiful.
it was beautiful. It was great.
Yeah, something I had my kids do were, "What were your roses and your thorns?"
Yes.
As a
Yeah.
weekend.
My grandson and granddaughter do that too. And so I love always hearing what their roses and thorns are.
For those of you who don't know what roses and thorns are, it's an exercise where your roses are your good part of your day and your thorns are your hard part of your day.
Yes.
And it's a way to kind of talk about and honor both in this way space.
I do. You got to honor both in order to appreciate the roses. You have to
Exactly.
understand and go through those thorns.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a great
Exactly.
thing.
Well, and what would you say is the biggest difference between when you went to school and when you taught?
So this is I read this question, Regan, and I loved it because when I went to school, it was all about rote memory. So you would read in a textbook, and because I grew up in a really small little panhandle town, there were lots of coaches that were our teachers, and so they were there on the path of least resistance. They wanted to just, hey, we're planning the football schedule. Yeah, we're teaching you, but go read your chapters and answer the questions at the end of the chapter. And that's really how we learned, even in math and history and reading and English. Even my English teachers were coaches.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of support in that. And so I was very shocked when I went through school at 35, 36 years old that they were actually, making this more about the student. And I loved that
Yeah.
because students, some of the best ideas that I ever got in the classroom were from students.
Yeah.
And so I loved that they were actually making their voice heard and it was part of what we were doing. So it was always great as a teacher hearing what kids thought of. And then remembering how awful it was to read a chapter.
Mhm.
I remember the first time that I would do like a test and we would be testing over some concept that we were learning in theater. And I would let them put their tables together
Mm.
and take the test as a group because it was like what Regan comes up with, I may not come up with. And it all contributes to the overall concept. And if we can talk about it and we can go through it, then what they can actually come up with at the end of the day
Right.
is going to be way more empowering than what I can memorize. So it was pretty awesome to do that.
Right, and I've said it before on this podcast, it's our job at the end of the day is to make sure we understand,
Right.
and the tools that we use to get to that place as long as we're doing our job. Our job is not to get the work done.
Right.
I can sit and copy somebody's paper all day.
100.
That's not my job.
Right.
My job is to understand the material.
For sure.
And so I love that.
Yeah.
I love teaching kids that way. Something that I've noticed as a through line as I've been doing all of these interviews is I'm trying to get at what's positive in our schools, what's going well in our schools, and how can we replicate more of that. And I noticed most of the times when I ask teachers what's going well, what makes you feel successful, it's always about the students, and it's always about the love between them and the students. And I think that that's really, really interesting that I found that with multiple teachers.
Yeah. I think that's an incredibly important part of it because I know as a teacher that if you don't love what you're doing, you can't do what you're doing. And I have a great example that there was so often that you would go down to the teacher's lounge. And when you go down to the teacher's lounge, you have this array of, newbie teachers that are just starting versus seasoned teachers that are just hanging on to retirement. And there's a big variance because that retired, close to retirement teacher wants to influence that new teacher, but not influence in a positive way. They really want to tell you all the reasons that you shouldn't be teaching, that you should, yeah, I can't believe you picked this career, oh, I'm going to tell you all the things that are going to be wrong with it. And it is toxic
Mhm.
because you have a newbie that's, 24 years old, 23 years old, coming into a career that they're looking at a lifetime. And you have these teachers that are in the teacher's lounge telling you how hard it's going to be and how the principal's never going to listen to you and administration's never going to listen to you. So it was something I had to disengage with really quickly. I could not stand and listen to it and be an effective teacher.
Yeah.
When I came into my teaching role, and I'm going to go off topic for just a second, but the teacher that I was coming in and taking over for had terminal cancer. So she had multiple long substitutes coming in and taking over for her. And for her, when I came in, I received these long list of, well, in second period, watch out for this student. And in third period, don't let this one get under your skin. And in fourth period, and I just had to tear those up. I couldn't read that because it was like, oh, you're already preparing me for the worst in every kid that I'm going to be encountering.
So I have a story. When I started teaching, I thought I was going to just be teaching sixth grade. And on the first day of school, a bunch of seventh graders walked into I actually sent them all to the office, told them they were wrong. And they came back and said, no, miss, you're wrong. Well, about a week after school started, I got one of my sixth grade classes moved into the other teacher's room and I got another seventh grade class. And my mentor teacher was the one I was getting the class from, and she came to me and gave me a list, "Watch out for this student, watch out for this student, don't sit these 2 together, don't sit," which I very much appreciated, I needed it. But she said, "Don't or look out for this student," we'll call him G.
Right.
"Look out for G." And so, well, I didn't realize that the rosters had gotten changed, and I got another student with the exact same name, G, but it was a different student. And so I was watching out for this student. And one day he was talking to his friends, and I go, "She turn around and you did."
Right.
And I said, "I'm going to have to write an office referral."
Right.
And he just broke down into tears. And I was like, "What? I got some of the worst news about you." And,
I'm
and
not saying that.
I went and looked at the last names. I said, ah, and sometimes you've just got to give those kids a fresh slate because even in your brain, it's not a fresh slate.
They have to have a
They deserve it.
They do, because just because you don't personally get along with a student doesn't mean the person in behind you is
Right.
going to have the ability to connect in a way. And it's very arrogant of any substitute or any teacher to think that just because you don't have a good rapport with them doesn't mean that someone else isn't. Let them figure that out on their own.
Right.
They're going to figure it out. That it truly is the one,
Yeah.
because we all have taught long enough that we know that when you go in and you talk with your fellow teachers and the people that you're working with, that they're going to have similar stories. There was definitely those times where you had the same student acting the same way in every class. But for a substitute who really is there on the worst conditions, because anytime a teacher is not there because of sickness or maternity leave or whatever, you don't really know what that other student is going through. So
Well, and on the flip side of that, I also think it's a really important for teachers to have an outlet to talk about that.
it is.
Teachers should have free therapy and they should have a safe space with a person who knows what they're talking about to go in and just let all of that out. It There needs to be that outlet and it does not need to be your first year teachers in the teacher lounge.
Right. I was just going to say that there is this, I don't know what you call it, maybe just like a responsibility of those seasoned teachers that feel like they need to make sure that every new teacher has to know all the ins and outs. But that's very misinformation to me.
Yeah.
I feel like they need to be able to talk to teachers that are maybe teaching the same content or teachers that are teaching the same grade level. When you go into the teacher's lounge, you have teachers covering every grade level, every content, everything. Whereas if you connect with people in your grade level or in your content, where I was electives and working with electives, that's a different kind of feedback that you're getting.
When I found both feedbacks very valuable for my first or my only year teaching, I had my mentor teacher who had been teaching my subject for 5 years.
Okay.
And then I had some teachers who were teaching the same grade level, but not the same subject.
Sure.
And the teacher who was teaching the same grade level, same subject, she was also a first year teacher. And, she and I would talk, but we wouldn't share the same students. We would share the same curriculum.
Sure.
And we would talk about the curriculum, but her students would succeed in areas that my students were failing in and vice versa. But, I would go down and talk to the history teacher who was teaching my students, and he would say, "Oh, that student, I get them to respond by doing this."
And was that helpful?
Yes, it was just as helpful. And then going to my mentor teacher, and she's saying, "Oh, when I approach this type of curriculum, I do this and this and this." And I found all of those relationships extremely valuable.
I'm really glad for you, Regan, because that did not happen for me.
Oh,
I would have a third period class that would just walk out of an eighth grade algebra class and they would be crying.
mm,
These were good kids. These were kids that were working hard. And the teacher was so strict and so, it has to be my way, the way that I'm teaching, the way that I'm going to guide you. And if you don't get it, that's not my fault. That's your fault. The expectation for these kids was really, really high. And maybe,
can middle schoolers cry? What are you doing?
well, and that was just it. It turned me off on the whole idea of, so are you here just for retirement?
Yeah.
Are you here just because you want to collect that, you know, $1,500 a month, $3,000 a month, or whatever it is, by making these kids miserable?
Yeah.
Because
Fun for no.
seeing an eighth grader cry over what her algebra teacher or his algebra teacher was doing was disheartening.
Yeah.
It didn't make me feel like anybody was winning in that situation.
Nobody's winning in that situation. The teacher's miserable, the students are miserable.
Right.
Well, speaking of, I wanna know about a time when you felt particularly successful as a teacher.
There was definitely moments that we won, but this is one of my favorite moments because I was a really new teacher. It was my first year at middle school, and the previous teacher had been out for several years with cancer. And so the kids that had come through her class were mostly subjected to a substitute. And so it was me coming in, and this was somebody that was finally offering stability and the same person every day, whereas, substitutes can vary from day to day. And I had this group of kids, and they were way too smart for their own good. They were definitely your GT kids that all got thrown in. And that's a really interesting concept to me that kids and I don't know if maybe it's in high school too, but they almost always seem to rotate together. We're all in, GT English, or we're all in, this special advanced social studies class. We're all in algebra together. So we're all in theater together. We're all in speech together. So they were always moving together. And it was almost like this front that just got this momentum going of,
Yeah.
they were way too smart for their own good. And they all were really good at playing the teacher. And so this particular student, he was hilarious. Like he was way better at probably being a teacher than I ever would be. He just knew how to play the crowd. And anyway, he had decided that in the eighth grade program, he was going to go into the choir, and he had never taken a day of choir in his life. And he was gonna go into the choir and perform with the choir. And, they had a very special program at the end of the year, school program, and so when the choir director called the group up, he joined them on the stage, and centerfold, all hands on deck, was standing there singing with the choir, not knowing their words or not knowing what it was hilarious. And you would sit in the audience and you were like, "Oh my gosh, I know he is really not supposed to be up there." And the choir director quickly pointed him out, and she pointed her finger right at him, and she pointed to the side of the stage, and you saw him duck his head and kind of walk on the stage. And the next day, all the teachers got an email. Oh, we're going to have a parent conference with about this particular student. And, we're going to all talk about, what kind of behavior he's got. And so they rallied all the eighth grade teachers together and called us all in after school. And we were all sitting there, and they all started. And oh my God, it was the most god awful information. "You've done this since the day you got into my class. You have been a problem. You have been distracted. You have," and the mom you could just see her. She was just over there with this god awful look on her face, like, "Oh, this is so embarrassing." It was like being in front of an executioner
No.
where they were just all land blasting him of all the horrible things that he had done in their class. And they went one by one, just talk about him. And they got to me. And I said to him, I said, "Look, I think that you're an eighth grade boy,
Mm.
and there's a lot going on in your head right now. And I'm not sure this was the best decision that you made. But I also know this decision that you did does not define you. And that what you did this day is only a chapter in your story. And that when you walk away, you're going to go on to greater things, and that you don't have to live in this moment."
Mm.
Because I had a feeling when he got home that every single thing that they were going to say to him were going to make him feel like he was the worst human in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Over a hilarious prank.
oh, it was great. It was great.
That doesn't harm anybody.
Right. But as the parent, as I have 5 sons, and as the parent, you want your kids to be above and beyond what everybody else would do.
Right.
But he came back the next year, and he said, "Miss Vincent, you were my Gandalf that day.
Oh.
You told me that it didn't define me, and it wasn't who I am and what I'm going to be. And I'm going to be okay." And this particular student now is doing some big editing for major picture shows, like big. I'm not going to name anything, but he's off doing incredible, incredible things. And I think if you have to ask what is something, yeah, I mean, I think that that was the moment that you realize how much impact you really have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I remember I have twins, and in elementary school, they had a teacher tell them, "You're never going to amount to anything. You're never going to be organized." And literally, they went into middle school thinking, "We're never going to be organized.
Right.
We're never going to succeed. Why should we even try?"
Yeah.
And our voices as teachers have such an impact
Right.
on the way we perceive ourselves and how we see ourselves, that shame on anyone that uses our voice for anything other than you can be successful, you can overcome this, yeah, and you can make a difference.
Yeah, I kinda had a moment where I realized that too. It was Halloween, and I had just gotten my first teacher paycheck,
Mhm.
and I told my husband, "I'm gonna spend some of it on the kids," and I got them some candy. Well, bunch of 7th graders, and I'm halfway across the room when the bell rings. Now, I didn't plan it. I started to be holding the bucket and giving them one piece at a time.
Right.
Well, I trusted this particular group of kids. I said, "Grab a piece of candy on the way out." Well, I got it was like a swarm of seagulls,
Sure.
and I got over there and it was all gone.
Of course they would.
And some of the students in that classroom and I just started crying because my 6th graders coming in next wouldn't get any candy. And they said it was all this one student. It was all Eli. We'll
Right.
call him Eli. It was all Eli. He took it all. Well, it was like Eli to do that.
Right.
So, and I had been crying all day because or not all day, but I've been crying for my 6th graders.
Right.
They didn't get candy, and one of the teachers down the hall had brought me some candy, and it all ended up just fine.
Right.
But I went up to Eli after school and I said, "Hey, you really hurt my heart." And he just started walking away from me. And I was like, "What is going on?" He come to me, "I did not steal the candy, and you just always think it's me because of who I am." And I was like, "Oh, you know, those students." And I realized those students had blamed him.
Right.
And it really, and I had to go back to him and I took him aside and I apologized. I said, "Eli, honey, I apologize. That was very, very wrong of me to just take those kids' word
Right.
and assume that you had done it just because that's who I thought you were.
Right.
That really impacted you."
But Regan, that's a really amazing thing that you did because I don't think most teachers will circle back and say those sort of things. It's just kind of like,
That was something I always wanted to do. 'Cause I wanted them to see me own up to my mistake.
right.
And I had teachers who would tell me, "Regan, you don't need to apologize to a 13-year-old."
Right.
You know what? I think that I need to apologize to them the most.
Right.
They need to see that adults come back and apologize.
No, and you don't see a lot of that in education. You don't see teachers coming back and saying, "Hey, I'm going to own this mistake, and this was not right of me to do."
That was something that was very important to me as a
I'm
teacher.
very proud of you
Thank you.
because it's not easy. It's not easy to come back and say, but once you see a kid crumble, you don't forget it, especially if your heart is in the right place and you're doing the right occupation
Mm.
where you really do value the kids' feelings. And
Yeah.
I'm an empath, so there were so many times that I would go home at night and think about the stories that were shared during what you would call the roses and thorns.
Yeah.
And I would go over those in my head and think, how am I going to make this day better for this kid? How am
Yeah.
I going to make a difference for them tomorrow?
You only get to see them for 50 to 80 minutes. I had them for 80 minutes, so it's a long time. But, you only get them for that much time. Your mind during that time.
Right. And what you say and comes out of your mouth impacts them
Yeah.
more than even if they come in with this mean scowl and
Then they're gonna.
yeah, no, totally. Like they work on it. They're at home practicing it in the mirror. I'm pretty sure like, oh, I'm gonna be the biggest jerk that you've encountered today. But really and truly, they're just kids.
They're just kids, and they're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And it's so hard. I remember it's so hard.
Well, I wanna know, what is a good example of leadership or admin in your eyes?
You know, that's a tough one, because as a teacher, you'll see it, and when you see it, you know it.
Mhm.
You may not know what you need to see, but once you see it in action, you see it working, it resonates, and you're like, "Oh, that's the way it should look."
Mhm.
Because I think more often than not, teachers that are getting, moved to being principals or administration, that are getting moved to higher positions, it's almost like just an expectation that, "Oh, you've been in the system long enough, you're getting moved up, and that's what should happen to you." But so often, I don't feel like that just because you've been in it for 20 years or 25 years just is a shoe-in for being that person in leadership and responsibility. I had a special needs son. He was autistic, and it seemed like the people that were put into the position of looking after him and making sure that everyone was taking care of him were teachers that just got moved in because they knew somebody or It wasn't because they were actually looking for the best person responsible for special needs kids or had the most training or any of that. So, but admin, it's funny because your mom and I were talking about this earlier, but we were talking about how an administrator can say thank you.
Yes.
An administrator can say, I was wrong. An administrator can do the exact same things that we're doing with students, but they're doing with teachers.
Mhm.
I didn't count that right. I didn't do that right. I heard through the rumor mill that you might be a teacher that I could have a problem with.
Mm.
So isn't it possible that the admin is doing the same thing that we as teachers were doing and watching and looking and trying to see how we can grow every single day
Mm.
and do our job a little better?
I love that, growing every single day.
Right. No, it is. It is growing every single day
In the
because
school, that's what you gotta do.
and you're gonna have a student that comes in one day that's gonna teach you a year's worth of knowledge.
Oh,
No matter
the things my students taught me,
right.
the
It's
things
huge.
my students reminded me of,
Right.
I said this in my first episode, they helped me get my life back.
Right.
I mean that.
I believe you. They have wisdom far
Mhm.
beyond what we give them credit for having and what we can see them having, and we discount them because of their age.
Yeah,
And it's so unfair because sometimes that innocence of wisdom that they have is exactly what we need
right.
to make us see things in a better light or a different light.
Well, and going back to admin trusting the teachers to have the wisdom
Oh, yeah.
and trusting the teachers to know what they need, know what the students need. Because I think I've said this in every episode. If I haven't, I mean to. Every student is different. Every
Right.
classroom is different. Every teacher is different. And teacher in classroom A is not going to be able to tell you what needs to happen in classroom B.
Right.
And teacher in classroom A should not be telling you what needs to happen in classroom B.
Absolutely.
And a good admin would be able to see that and recognize.
Well, we expect diversion in teaching, but we should expect it too in teaching. Yeah, what we're seeing as far as, we want diversified teaching, we want inclusion, we want all of that. And as the administrators, we're hiring the teachers.
Yeah,
So you should give us the benefit of doubt that we're going to bring things to the table that are sometimes uncomfortable
yeah,
and sometimes things that need to be explored more, but to give us the opportunity to share our wisdom.
yeah,
But I feel like that because admin are being breathed upon by the higher ups and higher ups and higher ups,
yeah.
that you're just kind of a victim to, whoever's hearing what and whatever we have to implement. And it's a machine. It's a process that no one is really going to, get to be free thinkers and get to explore and
Should
share.
not be the goal.
Yeah, it totally should be the goal, especially in education.
Yes. Yes.
Like, you know, there's a reason we're not one number one in the world,
Right.
and we need to be looking at the other countries
Right.
that are number one in the world.
Right.
What are they doing?
What's going right?
Right.
You
Right.
know,
What are you doing?
not what are we doing wrong? What's
Right.
going right?
Right.
How can we do more of that?
And not be scared of it.
Exactly.
Because, the fear of, oh, we're gonna have to spend too much money if we have to change the text out or we're gonna be do that. That
Money.
right. I mean, that's a whole nother avenue to it. But maybe it's just simple. Maybe it's not
It's
exploring.
not this hard.
Right. Right.
Well, this brings me kind of into my next question. If you could snap your fingers and change anything about education instantly, what would it be?
Because I have a special needs child, inclusion is so, so important to me. And because I was brought up in a time where kids were placed in a special room. Oh, that's the special room. And don't look too closely because they don't feel comfortable when you're looking at them.
Mm-hmm.
God, that sucks.
Yeah.
So special education being included in our mainstream education to me is huge. And don't think for a second that even though we're doing it right in some parts of the country, we're not doing it wrong in many parts of the country. And we need experts leading the way and not just people who have been pushed forward because they've been in the system long enough. So we should definitely listen to them because they've been here for 25 years. No, we need the top of the line educators leading us into how we can do this better. And you know what?
Yeah.
The parents need to be included into this because no one knows better how their kid has been treated and,
Mhm.
they're 3 years old, 4 years old, and all of those different age groups where you're taking them to the playgrounds. How are we going to make this better?
Yeah.
So that is huge. And when I was at my middle school, I started a program called Shine. And I actually dreamed of the name of the program. It was Students Helping Include and Nurture Everyone. And I could tell in the classroom the kids that gravitated towards the avenue of working with their special needs friends. And so we hand cherry picked those students and we put them in a class so that we were working side by side with these kids and we were putting them in performances and we were giving them every opportunity to stand before other students and do well. And you could just see not only does it transform the student that needs it in the, special needs group, but you're watching the kids that are coming in from this perspective of I don't have anyone in my life that's special needs, but now I'm working with a special needs child. This is going to be life changing. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with neurodiverse kids that I'm going to be learning and growing from.
Exactly.
So that's really to me what is one of the biggest things because we're in a time in our life where autism is so prevalent
Mhm.
that if we don't give them an opportunity to shine
Right.
per se, then we're doing a huge disservice.
Because they can.
They can, and they have to,
Absolutely can, and that I absolutely deserve to.
but the mentality so much, and I don't think it's all over the nation, but in so many different parts of the states, is just like, well, let's get them through high school, and then it's
Mhm.
the parents' problem. It's not. It's going to be all of our
All of our problems.
because give them an opportunity to find their place in this world. And I feel like that we are so good at gravitating towards the kids that are easy, the kids
Mhm.
that just learn information quickly, the kids that get along with everyone, the kids that don't say whatever it is on their mind.
Mhm.
But, those kids that are speaking their mind and are, saying odd things that just don't make sense at the time sometimes give us the best clue of what we ain't to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I wanna know, what is your funniest student story?
Oh gosh, there are a lot. It would probably definitely go back to that first year of teaching.
I love first-year teachers.
First year of teaching, definitely, like they had me. They had me right on their fingertip because, first of all, you want to be liked. It's really important that your students like you. No matter what the other teachers say, they have to like me.
Yes.
And I had a handful of students that were way too smart to be in the eighth grade.
Mm.
And, but there was always something going on, like and because I was a theater teacher, I really wanted them to be creative. I really wanted them to have those moments where they got to do things that they weren't doing in their other classes, and definitely got some eyes rolling at me. But, we had this one particular student, we had this baby doll's head
Mm.
that we were trying to assemble onto something else, and I can't even remember was a reason for the project. But I had the star soccer player in my class, and I don't know what he was thinking, but he, took the baby's head and he drop kicked it, and he
Of course he did.
kicked it through the window. And the baby's head went flying through the window and rolling out, past all of that. And he comes up to me with that, "Oh, dear God," look on his face, and I said, "Well, just go down to the office and tell him what you did." And then he was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, and it's probably the best thing to do because we gotta get the window replaced." So
Yeah.
but I stayed calm. I mean, I had 5 boys. And there wasn't anything going on in that classroom that I hadn't already experienced, but the baby head going through the window was great, and he and I are still friends on Facebook, so we still laugh about that moment of, "Do you remember?" "Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I remember that one." And then there was this other time that he had, like, this we were in the auditorium, and we were playing the stage game, and your mom's a theater teacher, so she probably knows it because she probably taught it to me, but he had this, like, lunchbox, and again, star student of soccer, he drop kicks it, but it hangs on a nail sitting up on the light of the top of the auditorium. You can't get to it.
Yeah.
And we're all just looking at it like, oh, wow, that really did hang there. So just, funny stories like that, really crazy moments that you don't predict. But how you deal with that,
Mhm.
I they have you.
Yeah.
They know immediately if you're gonna go with it or if you're gonna lose your mind and scream and yell and, talk about all the horrible things you're gonna do to them because this happened. And I never did that.
Yeah.
I didn't I mean, I was okay that they did crazy things. I expected it.
Yeah.
Was part of it because I wanted them to like me? I'm sure. There's nothing that I can deny about that. But they also knew they could trust me. They also knew they could tell me things when things were wrong and when things weren't good.
Mm.
And that just because I wasn't judging them for that, I wasn't going to judge them for something else.
Yeah.
And you know what, Regan? I saw them. Like they continued to come back every year
Mm.
to visit me. I mean, here we are. That was, gosh, in 2009. So here we are almost 20 years later, and I still have in contact with them. And they'll still say, gosh, Mrs. Vincent, those were some of the best memories. And what you have to remember is just because they were memories for the moment, they last. And
Yeah.
those kids remember those things.
Yeah. They stick with you.
They do. And same goes for bad teachers
Mm.
that say horrible things. And
Yeah, I remember some terrible things that were said to me.
right. And just as important as the question is, what does your good teacher do? What does that bad teacher do?
And how
Stuck
can we
with you.
stop that?
Right. Because you don't want to replicate that.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I had a teacher in 7th grade, Miss Jackson. Oh God. She made me feel like I could never do anything well.
Mm.
That, it was just going to be failure and that I was going to end up with a 50 for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then I graduated magna cum laude with a 4.0 grade. So, those are really important things that we remember that just because a teacher says it, because you're in this position of authority, you have so much that you can either use as a weapon and
Mhm.
hurt, or you can use as this great moment of teaching and
Yeah.
empowering and, strengthening.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much. Well, I'm wondering, is there anything you'd like to say to your students?
Oh my gosh. So I have two groups of students. So right out of college, I got a good job at Pollier High School, and I worked with students that I had never worked with before. I had, done my student teaching at Randall High School. So your total social economic, difference groups, and these kids that I worked with taught me so much about what I wanted to be as a teacher, how I wanted to be as a teacher, and I'm still friends with so many of them on Facebook, and, I love them so much. So I was filling in for a role of someone that had gotten sick and wasn't able to, continue her teaching contract, so I got pulled into that. And these kids all wrote letters as to why Mrs. Vincent needs to stay on and why she shouldn't go back. But if I had to say something to my students, thank you. Thank you for giving me grace. Thank you for being kind to me. I also coached the cheerleaders, and that was a rough go because, first of all, I was a band kid, I was a theater kid, I was not a cheerleader kid, and I did not have that relation to really vibe with them. But even they taught me things that I still use today and think back on so often. And the teachers that I worked with were so kind. I had a teacher that worked with me across the hall, and I had this student, and he fell asleep in my class every single day.
Mm.
Every day he would fall asleep in my class. And I would say to her, it was like, you know, I think he's just tired and I probably should just let him sleep. And she was like, what? So what? And I was like, what? And she was like, so what? And I was like, I don't know what you mean by that. And she was like, no, this student is going to face challenges throughout their entire life. And are you going to be somebody that empowers them or enables them?
Mm.
Because letting them sleep is enabling them.
Mhm.
Man, that's some power for wisdom
Yeah.
for a first year teacher
Yeah.
because you feel so mean saying, I know that you're working for your family, and I know that you're the second source of income for your family, and I know you're working till 3 o'clock in the morning. But so what? It's hard. It's hard. So I thank them for their kindness, for their generosity of spirit of letting me make my mistakes on them, but loving them. Oh my gosh, I loved them so much. And then I went to the middle school and they were so much fun. They brought laughter. My mom died the first year that I was teaching and it was tough. And they brought flowers and cookies and they didn't know me. I was just some lady that got stuck in the position,
Yeah.
but they were just the best. And even today, like I'm sitting here thinking as we're talking about this, and each one of them has reached out in their own way. You know, that little meme that goes around like, who was your favorite teacher? And what did they do to make you feel, worthwhile? And sometimes they'll write things and it's just like, God, it wasn't it wasn't a flop.
Mm.
I made a difference.
Mhm.
And your story was important to me. Your story was important to me. And that was really, really a good thing because we all have our story.
Yeah.
We all have our problems and our challenges that we have to overcome and the things that they were going through. Different socioeconomic group compared to the other high school, but same challenges as what they were going through. So if I had to speak to my students, I love each and every single one of you so much. Even the mean ones,
Mhm.
even the ones that gave me shit,
Yeah.
that were so tough. I had to open my heart and say, where am I not reaching you?
Yeah.
What am I doing that is going to make this a better relationship?
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for everything that you've given this podcast because 'cause you've given us a lot today.
Oh, thanks, Regan. Thank you for including me in it. Even though I've thought a different direction and teaching, it's really funny. I still dream about my classroom.
Mhm.
Like probably in a 30-day period, I bet you 19 of the days I'll dream about teaching in classrooms. And
I'm still dreaming about my classrooms. Yeah, we'll see how long it lasts.
it doesn't go away. I haven't been teaching in almost 10 years, and I still remember the responsibility and the things that we did. So it's crazy. It doesn't go away.
Well, thank you, and thank you for everything you've done for your students.
Thanks.
All right. Well, this has been the Unauthorized Teacher Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to give us a 5-star review on Spotify and YouTube. It really helps boost our numbers. Also, be sure to give us a follow on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram at the Unauthorized Teacher Podcast with no spaces. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you.